What's up and welcome to this little tiny channel where you come to hear some bad takes and bad opinions on a multitude of topics like Dragon Ball, maybe Star Wars or Kingdom Hearts or any number of sort of fandoms or communities, but surely not the least of which being pro wrestling, specifically WWE. And Money in the Bank, as of this video, wrapped up last night. I watched the whole show with a buddy of mine who I had intended to be on this video with me. Unfortunately, there were some technical issues and we were unable to get those sorted out, so I'll be doing this on my own today, much like I did with the WrestleMania video. It's largely going to be sort of a recap and a review of the event, what I thought of it. So, obviously the event started with the men's Money in the Bank match, which wasn't particularly surprising. I had a feeling it'd probably start with one of the ladder matches, and it made sense to start with the men's. So, the men's Money in the Bank match, honestly, I think it was a little underwhelming. Like, it wasn't a bad match by any means. I think the ladder match itself was just a little underwhelming. It didn't quite deliver on the level that many other Money in the Bank ladder matches have in the past. I don't think there were many standout performances in the men's match. I think Chad Gable had a very good showing. Carmelo Hayes did pretty well. But that was really... well, Andrade had a pretty good showing as well. But on the ends of Drew McIntyre, Jey Uso, and LA Knight, I don't think anything they really did stood out to me. And I don't think that their performance was anything other than typical of what we know them to be capable of. So, Drew McIntyre ultimately won the match, which was both shocking and not shocking to me at the same time. I thought Jey Uso was going to win the match. I knew that it was either going to be him or Drew. Nobody else to me made sense. It wasn't going to be Carmelo. It was too early. It wasn't going to be Andrade because he is still having trouble getting a solid reaction. It wasn't going to be LA Knight because he's got this thing cooking with Logan Paul. So, and Chad Gable's got a couple of different things going on with Otis and the rest of, the Academy leaving him, as well as the Wyatt Six sort of targeting him. So I had a feeling it wasn't going to be him either. So I wasn't super surprised it was Drew, but I was a little surprised it wasn't Jay. So I'm guessing they probably have plans for Jey Uso to be reintroduced to the Bloodline story sooner rather than later, and there's probably just not time to have him become Mr. Money in the Bank and cash in and actually be, a good singles champion and stuff, especially a world champion, which I don't know that Jey Uso is necessarily world championship material, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. Don't sue me over it, because I know there's a lot of people who want him to be a world champion, but I don't think, has he even held a mid-card singles title? I don't think he has. So, I think that's a hurdle he should, get over first. But the Bloodline stuff seems to be picking up the pace, and I think he's going to be needed for that, sooner rather than later. So it made sense for Drew. And we'll get back to Drew being Mr. Money in the Bank a little later in the video, because it is relevant, as any of you who watch the show would know. The next match was Sami Zayn versus Braun Breaker, and unfortunately, Sami Zayn retained. Here's a hot take for you. I'm not real high on Sami Zayn. I've never been a big Sami Zayn fan. I don't hate the guy, and there have been times where I was a fan of his and enjoyed his work, and I'm not knocking him because he's a great performer. He's good on the mic. He's good in the ring. He's solid all the way around. I'm just not a personal fan of his. Something about him just doesn't excite me. Now, when he was doing the Bloodline stuff, different story. That was probably, I think, the best work Sami Zayn had ever done was in the Bloodline. This Sami Zayn, I don't like that he is still presented as the underdog, but he's the champion. Yes, physically, he's the underdog. He was the underdog physically against Gunther. He was the underdog physically against Braun Breaker. I don't think he was necessarily the underdog against Chad Gable. Chad Gable's roughly around the same size, even though Chad Gable's in much better shape and real cut up and has more Olympian wrestling experience and so on. But it's difficult for me to buy somebody as an underdog when they are the champion. When you are a champion, it literally means you're the best in that given division. How are you the underdog and also the best? That doesn't correlate to me, and it doesn't make sense. So I hate this whole, Sammy's the underdog. And, every time Sammy has a match, it seems like the story is always the same. I've got something to prove to all the doubters. Like, bro, you've been doing that pretty much your entire career. At some point, you got to move on to a different story as a babyface. That's what made heel Sammy interesting. And it's what made Bloodline Sammy interesting when he started to shift into a babyface, because it was a different story than, I'm the underdog and have to prove something to people. And then ultimately, we went back to that story, and he's been on that story ever since. Frankly, it's tiresome. I'm tired of the whole Sammy has something to prove storyline because he's the underdog. I'm tired of it. I think this was a good time to pull the trigger on Braun Breaker, immediately getting a Intercontinental title, a mid-card title of any kind. Sorry. Because of how hot he is right now. Clearly, they're very high on him in the back. Clearly, the audience is really starting to get behind him and dig what he's doing. And, Braun Breaker's just a machine. He's an absolute animal. I really think they should have went ahead and pulled the trigger on him. But it didn't happen. I still think it'll... excuse me. I still think it'll happen sometime soon. I just think last night would have been a good time to do it. I wasn't a fan of Sammy winning the Intercontinental title off of Gunther to begin with. Because I didn't see the story there. And the story wasn't interesting to me. He was just kind of shoehorned in because he's Sami Zayn. Clearly, he's one of Triple H's boys, so he kind of gets shoehorned into stories where I don't think he necessarily fits. And I think this was a good opportunity to set Braun Breaker up as the just absolute monster and machine that he is by having him completely crush Sammy. I know people don't like squash matches, but especially squash matches at a high level, like on a PLE. I think if there was ever a good time to do a squash match, it was that match at Money in the Bank. Sami Zayn versus Braun Breaker. I think Braun should have just absolutely decimated Sammy. Could Sammy then go on a story to overcome Braun because it didn't work and Braun just destroyed him? Sure. I think that would have been the better direction to go. But we'll see where it goes. I am a big advocate of let's wait and see. Let's see if there's more cooking. Is there going to be more to the story? Because maybe there is. I just don't, as of now, I don't think that was the right decision. Now, sorry. Now, what happened after that, I'm going to get into in a little bit. I'm going to jump directly into the Damian Priest versus Seth Rollins match for the World Heavyweight Championship, which was an exceptionally good match. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a botch in the match. If you're curious about that, I recommend going back and watching the match. There was a botch near the end of it. I don't know if it was necessarily on Damian's end or the referee's end or the production truck's end. I feel like it might have been on the production side. So there was a small botch. I think having to do with the timing of Drew's interference. I think got messed up, but the match itself was solid. I thought it was really solid. I don't think it was excellent, but it was I think it was very good. I think both Seth Rollins always performs at a level you feel like he shouldn't be able to do anymore. With all the injuries and the bumps and the bruises that Seth has gotten, he continues to perform at a level that you wouldn't think all those bumps and bruises would allow him to. Seth Rollins is truly something special. He's truly vying for the right to be called one of the greatest of all time. I think by the time Seth Rollins is done with his career, he will have earned that in many people's eyes. Obviously, that's extremely subjective, and not everybody's going to agree on that, but I think there will be quite a few people once it's all said and done and his career is over, who call him one of the best in-ring performers of all time. Again, that's super subjective, but and Damian Priest continues to beat the whole transitional champion allegations and the paper champion allegations by constantly going out there. Every match Damian has, it makes him look more legitimate as a champion. To a point to where I'm now at a point where I'm enjoying his title reign much more than I anticipated enjoying his title reign. And I kind of didn't want it to end, and it didn't. Thanks to Drew McIntyre's interference with the Money in the Bank briefcase, attempting to cash in immediately in the match. Well, rather, immediately that night, not immediately in the match. It was near the end of the match. Attempted to cash in, which ultimately failed due to the interference of CM Punk, who showed up to once again cost Drew McIntyre that world championship. CM Punk showed up and just decimated Drew with a steel chair and knocked him out with the world title, ultimately leading to Damian retaining the title against Seth. Damian looked visibly frustrated at the interference, which we know in the confines of the story is because, he told Judgment Day not to get involved in his business, which obviously something's cooking there, because Finn Balor clearly does not agree with the changes that Damian has been making personally. He doesn't agree with Damian wanting to do things on his own. He doesn't agree with Damian's statement that the Judgment Day need him more than he needs them. Clearly, there's something cooking there. I would love to see a Finn Balor and Damian Priest feud, and I hope we have that soon. And I hope it's for the title, but I'm a little biased. I really want a Finn Balor world title run. I doubt we'll get it, but I really, 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 really want that. Seth Rollins visibly upset as well at CM Punk's interference, which leads me to believe that, we're inevitably going to get Seth Rollins, CM Punk, and Drew McIntyre in a triple threat. You can't do a singles with Punk and Rollins because Drew is involved. I don't know if they're going to go ahead and pull the trigger on that at SummerSlam or if it's just going to be Drew versus Punk. I do think that we're inevitably going to get Drew McIntyre and CM Punk in Hell in a Cell at Bad Blood, which just got confirmed for Atlanta, Georgia, which I'm excited about. There's a lot of moving parts here. What we thought was just going to be Drew McIntyre and CM Punk may end up involving Rollins as well. I thought maybe we get a triple threat at Mania, or maybe at Mania we get Rollins and CM Punk next year, since that was reportedly going to be the plan this year. But we'll see. We'll see where it goes. This is easily one of the more interesting storylines going on in the company right now. Drew McIntyre continues to just do the best work of his career, I believe, and he does such a good job at making this believable, and Rollins does too, to his credit, but Drew is something else at making this feel like it's not just a run-of-the-mill wrestling storyline. It feels it feels like legitimate beef between the two. It really, really does. And I'm super excited to see where it goes next. I'm also excited to get Rollins away from the world title and see where Damian goes next, because obviously Damian's got Gunther at SummerSlam. And as much as I want a Damian and Finn Balor world title feud, I don't see how Damian gets through Gunther alone. I just don't see it. Personally, I don't think it's time to pull the trigger on a Gunther world title reign. I know a lot of people want it to happen, but I think when Gunther wins that title, he's going to hold it for a very long time. And there's a few things I want to see happen with that belt before someone else holds it for a very long time. So I would rather see Gunther win it next year and go on a very long title reign with it, rather than right now, because there's other things I'd rather see happen with that world title. Now, Gunther might not win at SummerSlam. People assume that he will, but we could get more Judgment Day interference, which leads to Damian retaining, but ultimately breaking from the Judgment Day. I could see that happening. We will see how it goes, because clearly it seems like they want to turn Damian face, and Gunther's not going to be a face. It just doesn't work. So I'm interested to see what direction that goes in. I'm interested, what are your thoughts on it? Leave any comments on what do you think should happen between Damian and Gunther, and what would you like to see happen between Damian and Finn Balor and the world title in general. As far as I know, there's been people upset. It's like, oh, they wasted a Money in the Bank spot. Drew used it just to waste it, and he didn't even win. It's like, but shut the fuck up. Like, I've seen that all over Twitter, and people bitch and bitch and bitch about anything that happens in this industry. It's so incredibly exhausting to hear all the complaining. Like, bro, just sit back and watch it, man. Like, sure, I got a few gripes too, but it's not that serious. They didn't waste the Money in the Bank spot. Who the fuck else was going to win that briefcase? Jay? Jay was the only other plausible answer. And he's probably going to have to go back to this bloodline stuff soon. It's way too early to pull that trigger on Carmelo. Andrade gets virtually no reaction, so I don't know if he'll ever be at that level. Bro still can't cut a promo. LA Knight's about to be busy with Logan Paul. And he's about to probably win the US title from Logan Paul at SummerSlam. And then we got Chad Gable, who's got his hands full with the Wyatt Six and everything, so we knew it wasn't going to be Chad. And then y'all complain about people winning the briefcase and holding it for an entire year. Like, bro, he cashed it in that night. They used it as a vehicle to further the story, which was done, I think, beautifully well. Not every Money in the Bank needs to be predictable. And this wasn't predictable. At least not from the start. Now, once Drew won it, sure, you could probably predict things. Oh, he's going to cash it in tonight. CM Punk's going to cost him. That's probably what's going to happen. But the match itself wasn't necessarily super predictable, because a lot of people thought Jay was going to win. I thought Jay was going to win. I thought maybe CM Punk would cost Drew the briefcase win. But y'all have got to stop complaining. Just sit back and watch it as a fan. I promise you'll enjoy pro wrestling much more if you just sit back and watch it as a fan rather than watching it as a critic. I 100% promise you'll enjoy it more. You'll have a better time, and you're just going to be a happier person. Because it's fun not having to complain about every single thing you see on that screen. I thought it was handled beautifully well. Because if everybody wins the briefcase and then holds it for a half a year or a year and then cashes in and succeeds at the most opportune moment, then it becomes predictable. The use of the briefcase becomes predictable. And to me, that is a waste of the briefcase. You act like the briefcase is only designed to elevate younger guys. It's not only designed to elevate younger guys. Younger guys need to elevate themselves. The briefcase can't do it for them. You put the briefcase on Andrade, guess what? He's still getting no reaction, regardless if he's holding that briefcase or not. I mean, that's just the simple fact of the matter. It makes me really glad that a lot of fans don't book pro wrestling because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're talking about. And I'm not saying everything I say is correct or the right way to do things. At the end of the day, you need to be watching as a fan to have fun. If you critique everything, it's not going to be a good experience. I thought they handled the briefcase really well. There was no logical person to put it on because we kind of know what's likely to happen with both world titles over the next year. So it didn't make sense to put it on somebody just to actually waste it and they lose whatever benefit given them the briefcase might have given them. They used it as a vehicle to push forward one of the biggest stories going on right now, and I thought that was the right choice. The women's Money in the Bank ladder match I thought was significantly better than the men's. Significantly better. They stole the show in terms of the two ladder matches. And honestly, I think it was arguably one of the best matches of the night. Tiffany Stratton ultimately winning. And I think of all the standout performances, Tiffany and Chelsea Green had the standout performances. There were a few botches. There were a few oh my god moments because it was a very good match. But Zoe Stark is a charisma black hole. I just don't. She wants to blame everybody else for her not getting over when, instead of looking inward and realizing that something that she's doing is not working. Naomi, we knew it didn't make sense for her to win. Didn't make sense for Io to win a second time in a row. Lyra, I think, is still too new, and she hasn't garnered quite enough of a following. So my picks were Tiffany Stratton or Chelsea Green. I was fine with either one of them winning, and coincidentally, both of them had to standout performance. Everything Chelsea Green does is gold. She really has that mindset of, give me anything, just put me on TV. It doesn't matter how long or what it is, I'll make it work, and I'll make it some of the most entertaining few minutes of TV time you see that evening or maybe even that week. Everything she does is memorable, and it's entertaining as hell. I mean, it's the same way a lot of other people have gotten over. And, I mean, there were actually Chelsea chants. People wanted to see her win. I wanted to see her win. She was super entertaining in this match, selling the whole, I'm afraid of heights type thing. And then she took a massive bump at the end of the match off the ladder through 2 tables on the outside of the ring. So credit to her, because people don't realize that Chelsea's not a bad performer. Chelsea's a pretty solid performer. I'd go as far as to say she's a pretty good performer. And her persona, I think that how good of a performer she is can get lost in her persona sometimes. I really think she's found who she is, and it works for her, and it's entertaining. And at the end of the day, this is sports entertainment. Tiffany Stratton, I think, was also a good call. Her winning, her being a very young talent. She's someone that the briefcase can do more good for than Chelsea. I believe Chelsea is already starting to find who she is and stuff. Chelsea's got a bit more experience. I think she could become a women's champion without the briefcase. Tiffany Stratton, on the other hand, I think is early enough in her career. The briefcase actually does help her. And I'm excited to see if she continues to elevate her game and continue to improve more and more and more in the ring, because she gets better every single time she steps between those ropes. And I'm very excited for what is in store for us in Tiffany Stratton's future. Teasing that she would like to face Trish Stratus last night, especially during the press conference, which honestly I think would be a very entertaining feud, and it would help elevate Tiffany to another level, getting to have a singles match with a legend like Trish Stratus. I think that would be extremely beneficial for her. Now we're going to talk about the main event, and then I'll talk about probably the biggest news that came out of the show last night. The main event was the Bloodline versus Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton and Kevin Owens. Now, Tonga Loa sat this one out for the Bloodline. I've heard he's concussed, so that might be why. So it was Solo, Tama Tonga, and Jacob Fatu. This was Jacob Fatu's first actual match in WWE. So I was excited to see him get that exposure in a match to the crowd so people can really see what he's made of. I expected the Bloodline to win, because if they lost, it would 100% diminish everything they're trying to achieve with making this new Bloodline a threat. Solo, the problem with Solo is he doesn't seem to get any better. The match was good, don't get me wrong. The match was phenomenal. I thought it was really good. But you've got excellent performers in there. Solo's not a bad performer by any means. He's a pretty good performer, but that's the thing. He's pretty good. He's not great. And he was surrounded by great performers. Tama Tonga was a great performer. Jacob Fatu is a very great performer. Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, and Randy Orton, exceptionally great performers. All three of them, as we know. Because Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes, I mean, their resume speaks for themselves, and Randy Orton is a living legend at this point. Solo was surrounded by people better than him. And the problem with Solo is he doesn't get any better. He doesn't improve every time he gets in the ring, which makes me worried that this is his ceiling. Solo had, and still has, potential, I think. But he's starting to surround himself with people that are just better than him. And people that have more stage presence, more aura, if you will, than him. Jacob Fatu overshadows Solo. From his in-ring prowess to his physicality to just his total stage presence and his presentation. Solo is just not very viable and convincing as a tribal chief. Now, we saw what happened on SmackDown. Paul Heyman did not accept Solo as his tribal chief, and they put Paul through a table, which obviously is going to lead to Roman Reigns inevitably returning probably at SummerSlam. And there will be hell to pay for touching his wise man. And we all know it's going to be the pop of the century. It's going to be very exciting. The match itself, like I said, was excellent. You don't get bad matches from Kevin Owens. You just don't. And these days, you don't get bad performances from Randy. From a storytelling perspective, you don't get bad performances from Randy. And Cody delivers, I'd say, 9.99 times out of 10. Tama Tonga continues to prove himself inside a WWE ring. Jacob Fatu has proven that he belongs here. And Solo's just kind of there. But the match was excellent. Obviously, there was a ref bump, which allowed Tonga Loa to get involved. Which, if he was concussed, if that's true, I don't know if it is or not. If he was concussed, credit to him, because he still took an RKO, which was impressive. He did kind of botch a low blow on Kevin Owens, which seems weird, and it's like, how do you botch a low blow? But I'm not sure if that was his fault, or if it was because Kevin Owens moved forward. I'd have to go back and watch it a few times, because I know Kevin Owens did move forward, so I'd have to watch the sequence of events. Did he move forward before Tonga Loa tried to go for the low blow, or did Tonga go for it and just miss, and then Kevin move forward? Because that might not be his fault, but if it was, then bro, how do you fuck up a low blow? Like, how do you mess that up? I think it sets a precedence that, the Bloodline winning and Solo pinning Cody obviously sets up for a Solo and Cody match at SummerSlam. I don't think it'll be that great of a match. I think it'll be about the same as any of their other encounters, but it will likely end with a Roman Reigns return, which is honestly what people are going to be waiting for. But it does set up this new Bloodline as dangerous, and they did come off as dangerous last night. So, now the biggest piece of news is John Cena announcing his retirement. And don't get this twisted, because a lot of news sources, they jumped on it as soon as it happened and they reported, oh, John Cena says he's retiring next year at WrestleMania. No, he's not. His retirement, his farewell tour begins next year. He says and some of this info comes from the press conference, but he says he would like to work somewhere between 30 and 40 dates, but it's a whole tour. He's given us a year, basically. He wants to end it. He wants to begin it next year in January. Or he wants, the run's going to begin in January because he's already declared himself at the Royal Rumble. And it's going to run through December of 2025. He came out with, a new shirt, new towel, new hat. The merch said, it says, what did it say? It said something along the lines of the last time, is now, or this is the last time, or something like that. The last time is now, I think is what it said. Very emotional. I don't know that I'm emotionally ready for a John Cena retirement. We all knew it was coming, but I'm not emotionally ready. He said that next year's Royal Rumble will be his last. Next year's Elimination Chamber will be his last. And next year's WrestleMania in Vegas will be his last. people interpreted that as he's retiring at Mania, but he later clarified he's going for the whole year. It's a farewell tour. I'm unbelievably excited to see what stories we get from John Cena. I know a lot of people are pushing. They're like, he's going to do a whole year run, put the world title on him or put the WWE title on him so he can break Ric Flair's 16-time record. I'm kind of take it or leave it on that. If he does it, fine. If he doesn't, also fine. It doesn't hold the weight that people think it does. Because it's two very different eras. And I don't think it matters to John very much. I don't think John concerns himself with that type of stuff. And I also think people are missing the fact that it's incredibly likely that Charlotte will be the one to break her father's record. That's incredibly likely. Could John win it and break the record and I'd be happy about it? Sure, 100%. John Cena, one last John Cena world title run would be fun. I just, do you sacrifice other potential stories for that? And do you give him the WWE title or the world title? Which one of those do you let him have? If he won the world heavyweight title, it would immediately add a huge piece of legacy and name value to that title. It would immediately elevate that belt even higher, having it put on a legend like John Cena. As far as the news is concerned, I'm very sort of, I don't know, it's bittersweet. I'm glad we're going to get a whole year of John Cena. 30 to 40 dates is a pretty good amount of dates. I'm just not ready for him to retire. I've watched John Cena since the start of his career. I grew up largely watching John Cena. I was born in 95, so I was real young during the Attitude Era, but I do have many memories from the Attitude Era. It's mostly just images. But a lot of my more detailed pro wrestling memories are from the Ruthless Aggression Era, which John was one of the guys that helped shoehorn that era in. And I'm going to be very, very sad to see him go. It's always sad when you start to see your childhood heroes hang it up. And over the past decade or two, we've slowly seen a lot of the guys we grew up watching hang up their boots. Or in this case, hang up the jorts. And it's just, I don't know, it's very sad, but it's like you're thankful that John can go out on his own terms and do it the way he wants to do it, and he can go out healthy. He's not being forced to retire, and hopefully he'll go out on a level that leaves fond memories in this final year of his. I don't know, we'll always have the memories that John Cena gave us, whether you booed him or you cheered for him. We're always going to have those memories. And he already has undoubtedly go down as one of, if not the greatest of all time. When you think of the greatest of all time, generally you need to clarify, is are we talking about the greatest of all time in terms of star power, in terms of their contribution to the business, and in terms of, what they did for their company and how they were able to elevate or carry an era? Or are we talking about the greatest of all time in terms of, performer, in-ring wise, on the mic, things like that? The sort of more subjective stuff. You got the greatest of all time in terms of how big of a draw they are, and the greatest of all time in terms of who you think was just the best. Obviously, John Cena is one of, if not the greatest of all time in terms of draws. I mean, he probably isn't the greatest of all time in terms of drawing power, because I think others have drawn more money than him. I think Hogan drew more money than John. I think at this point, Roman has probably drawn more money than John. But he's in that conversation. He's on that Mount Rushmore of top draws ever in the industry with Hogan, Steve Austin, The Rock, and Roman Reigns, I think, will inevitably be on that list as well, and John is on that list and has been for some time. Now, if you were to ask me who I think was the greatest of all time, personally, I'd say Shawn Michaels. But again, that's it's two different conversations. John Cena is undoubtedly one of the absolute best to ever do it. There's a reason he is as successful as he is outside of the WWE, and that's because of his ability and capacity to entertain. And that's why it translates so well to his career in Hollywood. Ultimately, I'm excited we get a year of him. I'm going to be sad to see him go when the time comes. I'm probably going to cry like a baby. But all in all, if I had to rank this year's Money in the Bank event, I think I'd give it maybe an 8 out of 10. Maybe a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10. I think it was a good show. I don't think it was a great show. I think they've had much better shows this year than that. I think there were a few too many weird situations or botches. I thought the men's Money in the Bank match didn't quite deliver on the level I expected it to. It was a good show. I did enjoy it. I don't think it was a bad show by any means. But I think they could have did better. The women, I think, had the standout performance of the evening. So let me know what you thought of WWE Money in the Bank this year. I'd love to hear your opinions in the comments. If you like videos like this where I discuss WWE PLEs, then please subscribe and hit the like button. Not only does it help get the video out there to more people, but it allows me to see if people would like more of these types of videos. That's why I haven't done every PLE, because I'm not sure exactly how much people want to see these videos or hear my takes on what's going on in the world of WWE. So if you like the video and you like these types of videos, please hit the like button. Leave your comments or your thoughts on everything I've talked about. What did you think of the show? Where do you think each angle coming out of the show is going to go? And are you excited for SummerSlam?
You stole my heart of gold after my silver soul. Can you dig any deeper now?
And please don't forget to subscribe.